Okay, we're back with another quick tip episode. This time we are covering a potentially fatal problem or behavior that we see in founders time and time again, and that is the aversion of conflict or the avoidance of confrontation. And that is potentially fatal for several reasons. One being that as a founder and as a startup team, there will always be moments of crisis. And if you avoid having hard conversations that might lead to bad feelings for a moment, then you cannot respond and react quickly to those moments of crisis. It also typically does not enable you to build a strong culture, and a culture specifically that focuses on producing high quality products and services that make your customers really happy. And it also typically leads to you not being able to really connect deeply with the people around you because you're not engaging in some of the most important conversations that you will need to have as a leader. So today we are diving deeper into all of those. And especially, we want to share with you 4 ways in which you can actually mitigate the risk and learn if you are conflict averse and how to deal with that. So Derek, maybe we'll just jump right into the first one.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say that the research shows that there are a lot of conflict adverse people that become very successful entrepreneurs. And so this isn't something that knocks somebody out of the box. But there are these 4 ways that somebody who does fear conflict, can access so that they become effective as a leader and as someone that creates a very productive culture. So the four things are, 1, you work closely with somebody that's a friend and that knows you well, and that ultimately you feel comfortable say how you really feel, and they feel comfortable with you. The second is a variation on that where you choose people who you feel comfortable explaining that you're conflict adverse, and you say, this is how we're going to deal with one another so that there's no drama and there's no emotion. And then if you choose wisely and well, you can create a strong enough team around you where the drama is highly minimized. The third thing is that you can work with a therapist or a coach to develop well-established cognitive skills, which are these mental skills that you think about when you see conflict germinating around you. Okay, here's my checklist of how I'm going to deal with it. If you know these checklists and you practice them, they become fairly effective in helping you get through this something that you fear. So the cognitive therapy can really, really help. And then the fourth, but this only is if you can grow to a certain size, you hire a human resource manager who's got his training in conflict resolution as part of the HR skill set. And then you ask them to deal with that. Of course, all 4 of them have trade-offs.
Right. And all 4 of them are not easy feats to take on, but they're very critical for anyone who knows about themselves that they're conflict averse to become more effective, become a better leader. So let's dive into the first one, which is finding a close friend, someone that you really trust and have the relationship with already established, that you can be very honest and open with each other. Let's dive deeper into that one.
Yeah. Working with somebody that you already have built up trust with can be very powerful if you're both motivated with exactly the same objectives and goals for the startup. That can be tricky to do, and we have a whole sprint on co-founders and how to deal with that. But classically, a lot of people found companies with their spouses or their best friends or their college roommates or like, and it can work spectacularly well with that alignment.
Right.
You're both working towards the same goals. That also applies to this second strategy where, okay, it's not somebody that you already have the close personal relationship with and that you trust, but these are people that you carefully select, that you explain, this is how I need to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be good for either of us if we let conflict get too emotional. And so how can we deal with each other very objectively? And very often, but not always, it involves putting things in writing rather than dealing face to face where the emotions can get out of control. But that's not the only, way to do that.
Yeah. So that brings us to the next one, which is to find a professional therapist and or coach to work with. So what are recommendations that you would have that we can share in not only why that's important, but also how do you pick the right therapist and coach to help you specifically with the conflict averseness?
Yeah, well, today a lot of people go and ask ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, and they can be very effective at saying, hey, here's how the cognitive therapy on conflict aversion works. And if the therapists, you should make sure that they have experience and that you check on their credentials or get see what their reviews are and the like. Or best thing possible is that they help somebody that
Right.
and help them successfully. That's a wonderful way to check it out. Knowing what these steps, I'm going to break our conflict into these smaller, more easily resolved, discussions. And how to do that. It's one thing knowing that you want to do that, but it's a completely different thing to doing it when under the pressure of the emotions
Exactly.
of trauma. And that requires good coaching and practice. And so somebody needs to run you through this and, generate some drama and conflict and the like, and get you to the point where you feel comfortable. Okay, I back away. I think through my checklist. Okay. And you can do that no matter what.
Yeah. And one note on this last point, and what we see very often now happening, that founders turn to AI systems, GPT and Claude and others in these situations where there's nothing fundamentally wrong with that. As you said, you will get the information, but the real learning and the growth happens in the moments where you are dealing with resolving a conflict or being in a conflict. And that's where having a experienced mentor, coach, or therapist on call so that you can really train your skills in that moment, which is reading a web page or a chat will not necessarily get you there.
Yeah, and what happens is that, I know, how to do this, but that conflict, that's just not important enough yet.
Right.
For me to have to go through all of that, which I dread doing. Okay.
Yes.
The problem is that enables things to fester and they get worse.
Exactly.
Okay? And so if you think, hey, I can deal with this, but that's not important enough, you're making it worse.
Yes.
Not better.
And a good coach and a good therapist there will push you just enough that you are not avoiding engaging in learning how to deal with conflict.
You nip it in the bud. Boom. Okay.
Yes.
You jump on it before it really gets, gnarly.
Great. Which then brings us to the point of once you're big enough and you make enough money and you have a big enough team, one of the mitigating strategies can be to hire an HR professional. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that sounds great on the surface. You can just outsource the problem to someone else. But on the one hand, that is somewhat true. On the other hand, only to a certain degree. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, and then it's expensive,
Right.
A good HR person with great skills and experience they require some very significant salaries. So you have to have a decent size. Also, you don't want to hire somebody just to be on call to do this.
Right.
And this is their only, jobs. An HR professional will want to come in and do a lot more than just take care of your dramas.
Right.
And another challenge is that where the HR person sits in the hierarchy means that it's very difficult for them to be effective in dealing with dramas that happens in people that are above their rank in the hierarchy. Right. So sometimes having the HR person isn't good enough to help you with the dramas that matter most, which is with your executive team or your teammates or your co-founder. HR person is not going to help you with your co-founder.
Right.
Or somebody who thinks they're your co-founder,
Right. And really that means that, yes, a HR person can help with team-related conflict, even some of the conflicts that you do, in fact, not necessarily need to deal with as the leader, especially if the business is already bigger. But it does not remove you as a leader from the responsibility that once you've realized that you're conflict averse, that you also do need to invest in learning how to be less conflict averse, to be as effective and as successful as you can be, and in turn help your team be as successful as they can be. One way in which you can find out, because everything we talked about so far means you already know that you're conflict averse. But because of where conflict aversion typically comes from, which you can uncover with the help of a therapist and a really experienced coach, oftentimes you're not even really fully aware, especially when you're early in your journey. So one of the ways that you can deal with that is that you find a few trusted friends and you can ask the question, hey, do you think I'm conflict averse? And if you ask the right people, then you will get a hint, at least, if not a very well-meant and supportive explanation of how you are or not, you aren't conflict averse. So that is probably a good starting point if you may have a hunch that you are, but you're not entirely sure.
And if you start sweating and you have to deliver bad news, you're conflict averse.
Exactly. Okay. Well, that hopefully sheds some light on conflict aversion. Are you or are you not? How much are you conflict averse? And gives you some starting points on how to grow your skills to mitigate that.
Super.